Welcome to Reflections, a program where we discuss values and virtues for the transformation of the individual and the society in general. I am Father George Ehusani. I have with me in the studio once again our friend Sam Amadi, Associate Professor of Law and Director of
Abuja School of Social and Political Thoughts.
Abuja School of Social and Political Thoughts. Good, Akukwo. So, you're welcome to the studio. And then, Sam Amadi is a member of the think tank. The one we know at Terra is that you are a member of the think tank of Terra.
Yeah.
And then he's been engaged in the issues of Nigeria for many, many years. So this time I want us to discuss leadership, legitimacy, and national progress. Whether it is state legitimacy or local government leadership legitimacy, leadership legitimacy is the same, whether it's local government or state or national, and how it interfaces with development. I am looking at the fact that we have a government in place, but then there are issues in court. And so we are expecting the court to rule one way or the other. However, I am wondering if I was an investor, wouldn't I tarry for a while so that the cloud clears before I come?
Absolutely.
Then we also have things like the recent events with DSS and suspended central bank governor, and see all the drama that has been playing out. And especially when you have agencies of government or agents of government that don't obey court order, or even directly violate the sanctity of court, like what happened in terms of correctional center and DSS, who is to take possession of Emefiele and so on, right in court. It has to do with when you can see that government does not obey court. Court says, release this person. You grab him and go and lock him up. Hey, if I was an investor coming to the country, I would wonder, is my investment going to be safe? Right? Okay, somebody yesterday was in charge of EFCC, economic crimes. And then the next day he's locked up away 4, 5, 6 weeks, and nobody is saying anything about it. And I'm saying to myself, whoever runs government like this, how can we be sure that there is rule of law? Is rule of law not something that is supposed to be a priority before other elements of development follow?
Absolutely. So I think that's the key point. Let's start with rule of law. You see, there are debates around what brings development, what explains why some countries are rich, some are poor. So economists have focused on many things, but there's an agreement that you need at least what they call rule of law regime that does 3 things. 1, protects right of property. That means people have assurance that if they produce something, develop something, they can be allowed to enjoy the fruit of their labor. That's the spark for productivity. 2, that rule of law must be something that treats everybody equally. So you can't be a developed economy if there's no certainty and assurance that people are not expendable. So it's not a case of priority. Okay, these are serfs, these are lords. The rule of law requires that people have a sense in which there's equality, everybody, some kind of meritocracy, if you like. And thirdly, rule of law will require certainty. People want to be sure, if you want to invest, take for example a simple thing about buying land in Abuja here. If there's no guarantee of when a deal is done,
yes,
if you can buy land and then maybe
5 years after somebody comes,
Agbero or what they call it in Lagos, those
Omonile,
or any other kind of bagging chiefs or whatever you call them, or Igbo traders or Fulani herdsmen, whatever it is, can upset your ownership and say, okay, you know what, they scramble it, and no court will.
No recourse. And you have no recourse.
Even if you go to court, it's sham. Everybody knows that. Look, you go to court. The chiefs in the court, the chiefs of the land, the courts will defer to the chiefs. If you have that kind of situation, Abuja will not be where it is today, because nobody will put investment to build all these beautiful places. They made those investments because they have some assurance, significant, that this is their property and they will not be dispossessed easily. That's the beauty of rule of law.
So I mean, you have defined what rule of law is. In recent times in our country, we have this cliche, go to court. That somebody can actually come, take this jacket off you, and go away. And you complain and he says, go to court. And that he is saying go to court because he knows that you are not likely.
Go to court is not a parable about rule of law. It's a parable about the absence of rule of law.
Of rule of law.
Go to court is a mockery. It's a touting you to say you've no option. Because if people ask to go to court, people should be afraid of.
People should not really be afraid of being taken to court.
Because the court, but it's like court is impotent. And so the notion of go to court, especially in election cases, is a notion that the courts cannot upset us. The court will protect status quo. The court is not strong enough, courageous, and independent enough to do certain things. And that brings us to major issue about legitimacy. You see, people look at illegitimacy in two ways. One is legal. So when a constitution sets out and says this is the way to be qualified to run for election, the constitution therefore means that if a man does it another way, he's not qualified to. So every jurisdiction in the world sets out rules of qualification, just like every profession, law, medical doctor.
Yes.
You have to, even if you're the smartest guy and you didn't go through the process,
yes,
you will not be qualified and certified to be a surgeon. Now, it doesn't matter that you are a wizard.
It's not about
and that
how,
you have caught people before and they're ready to survive. The fact that you have to be qualified.
We need a certain,
yes. So the same way, the Constitution provides for qualification to stand for election. Now, if you breach any of those things and you muzzle your way through, then you carry a token of illegitimacy, legally speaking.
If you do not follow the process.
And if the court endorses a breach of those process, even though the court is the ultimate interpreter, but people know that the court, these things are clear. Now that's what called political legitimacy. So people say, well, the court has spoken, we are powerless, but this court spoke wrongly. Now, we hear people talk about the Supreme Court governor in terms of Imo State. Now, they're not speaking that they're legal experts, but there's a consensus. They have this overwhelming notion that the Supreme Court either deliberately or inadvertently.
And that cloud has continued to hang over that state.
And that's a total distrust. So people feel this is not the right person should be here. Now, you have to couple legal and political legitimacy. And that's why we do free and fair election. Free and fair election is a sense in which people say, we elected him. Yes. That's our president.
Or that I did not vote for him, but I know the majority voted for him.
We doesn't mean that he's a candidate. Well, yes. I didn't vote for him, but he's legitimate. Yes. They chose him. Yes. So, but when the people say, we didn't choose him, the people didn't vote for him, but he was imposed on us.
Political illegitimacy.
And now, when you have political legitimacy, and that's we have to understand the spate of coups across West Africa. These countries were first constructed, many of them legitimated by colonial authority. They could move from legitimacy to legitimacy by way of popular acceptance. So the government is there, people vote for them, they like what they're doing, they invest in the people, they're not investing in their ethnic groups to the detriment of the other people. But when they start discriminating, exercising governance, and leaving the people behind,
they start going across to the illegitimate
political legitimacy. So people say, oh, this government it's not even a government. I saw a video of some guys from Niger happy and saying that they are happy because these people are not they are puppets of Western countries. So for them, this government is not a government. So you are verging from legitimacy to illegitimacy. Then when a government through coup making or through rigged election, they are now legally illegitimate. So you now see ineffective state. First, they have no political support. Two, because they have no political support, they are not technically resourced to solve problems. So those problems, whether it's unemployment, poverty,
it just continues.
It continues. Land degradation, climatic change, all places, roads, no network, no economic poverty and economic stagnation. It compounds. at a point, that crisis leads to what we now have as generalized insecurity and instability. And so these leaders who are illegitimate now turn to warlords. They can't keep some territory together. And that's what happened. So you see in Nigeria, some part of the country are ungoverned spaces. The government lacks capacity, both legitimacy, political acceptance, as well as military technical capacity to police their territory. The people reject them. The people enable insurgents. The people kind of provide an incubator for insurgents and all kinds of dissidents and people who may be rebelling against the state, whether it's IPOB supporters or whether
the fact that people accept in parts of Nigeria to pay tax
to those
to
people
terrorists and bandits
means that the state capacity to protect is short, and the state legitimacy, they have confidence in the state. So that's the explanation for the crisis in Africa and West Africa, because the government is neither strong nor acceptable. The government is not investing in the people. Therefore, the people lose connection with their government. And then any insurgent, any strong warlord who appears to pander to their life,
to have interest in their
well-being and manipulate that,
who pretends to have interest,
manipulation, they give him support, and then the person has enclave to use to fight the government, and then that's the crisis starts. So we should be very careful about legitimacy. And then when political elites and judicial officers, even some of us who are civil society persons who are enlightened, kind of play dumb to the crisis of legitimacy and don't want to, for example, before the current government was inaugurated, I had argued clearly that it's actually responsible for a country to inaugurate a president whose election is being constitutionally challenged, not frivolously, not like people are to their panel saying this is a case that's based on constitution that could go this way or go that way by not just fringe party, by leading parties.
Is this not what the statement you made and the position many people, is that not what Cardinal Nayakon said?
Exactly.
That it is not a responsible conduct to actually inaugurate a president while you have legitimate cases in court.
It's not anywhere.
That we need to quickly change
it's
our
not
laws.
Anywhere. And I told them then, when Cardinal said that, people say, I said, Cardinal was right. And I told him, I said, look, if you look at the Constitution, Father, the Constitution does not mandate that you must swear in the person on May 29. And nothing stops the Supreme Court, for example, determining these questions of law quickly. For example, if they were serious-minded after the inauguration, INEC was even given notice by Olusegun that there's a question of 25.
Came out clearly and said that the question of 25 can be sorted out in 1 week.
You go to Supreme Court and do a reference to
interpretation, yes.
So Supreme Court decide for us and decide it. So how can you leave a constitutional question undecided, leave several questions undecided, inaugurate a president, and then expose your country to the instability? Either do, you are damned, don't do, you are damned. So if the tribunal rules and the Supreme Court affirms that the president is not validly elected, for example, then you create a notion of anxiety of giving. And if you rule that he is elected and maybe rule in a manner that people feel that this is really like cop-out, you just want to cover it. But these things you should have sorted out before inauguration. So I think that the Nigerian states and Nigerian political elites are playing too much. They're joking with
very serious
issues that could lead to destruction.
When the makers or the framers of the law, right, tended to believe that the people who are in the courts, the judicial officers, those who will be elected, who will be appointed to INEC, the law is on their side, as we can see, because the law believes that no, higher persons that are appointed to these positions will have the interest of the country at heart and not the interest of any pander to the interest of any individuals. But I think the framers of the law were over-ambitious in terms of...
over-realistic. They were...
unrealistic.
Unrealistic and presume so much on human goodness.
Yes.
Now, what we're learning from legal experience is that now with draft law, we talk about what Justice Wendy Holmes talk about the bad man's theory of law. So we start by assuming that people are bad. Look at incentive structure.
Rather than presuming that they are excellent human beings.
So you will now say, we second guess you, we put incentives and put cross-check what you do and consequences. For example, think around it. The Constitution says a president must submit his
minister's list
60 days
in 60 days.
Now the president is arguably has not done that. Yesterday was the last day, and they have not yet
submitted 28 names.
So invariably, either way, if he doesn't submit the rest, he has contravened the constitution that says already each state will have. If he does, he has also contravened the constitution that says it must be done. So the question is, why somebody asks more, he says, what's the consequence? There's no consequence in the law. So maybe if a law has said, if he so does, he will be removed from power. So our people look like they are like children in nursery. You have to lead them by the hand. You have to carry a whip and hit them. So you don't just make laws say nobody should do this.
But there must be sanctions.
You must say who will sanction who. So you look at it and say, okay, realism says, look, we are a people that we can take advantage. We shouldn't presume that all of us understand the danger we are facing. And that's why elites have a responsibility. Elites because of position or education. All modern states and all civilizations have thrived on some positive elitism, where some people feel they owe the state, they have to protect the state. Whether it's judicial statesmanship, we talk about Thurgood Marshall, we talk about Justice Marshall, we talk about all the great justices of old who use the judicial tool, that judicial privilege, to define their country
society.
And move away from civil conflict, whether in terms of the segregation and all that. We've seen the days of Nikki Toby, days of Esho, days of Oputa,
yes.
the days of Ways, when under military rule, this Supreme Court judicial statesmanship, they were able to preserve our freedom
because of that judicial statesmanship. There are things we're having now that are worse than during military rule.
Of course, and the irony is that today, under the military, we had judicial activism. Under democracy, we now have judicial passivity.
Yes.
And that's really the challenge, that judges are now so sunk up to the political class. They are free to mingle with them. In the past, under military rule, the judiciary saw the military as opponents, enemies. So they advise themselves and they
to stay off.
Watch carefully, vigilant their performance. And so they could say no. Even when they made decrees trying to oust their jurisdiction, they said, before we remove our hand, we will make sure you did everything properly according to that decree. We won't just see a decree and run away. But today, under civilian rule, when the judiciary should have been stronger, more independent, more assertive, they are less so. And so the question then is, if the political elites, the judicial elites, the spiritual elites, and all the elites overlook, disregard these telltale signs of illegitimacy, it's like what Jared Diamond of the U.S. anthropologist and archaeologist, geologist, we talk about how states collapse. State collapse. It's imperceptible, like small trends. People see it, but they fail to respond. They fail to, rise up and deal with it.
People fail to see the handwriting on the wall.
They see the signs, but they disregard it.
Yes.
They see that, look, we are verging towards authoritarian rule, towards tyranny. The constitution is being violated. So instead of stepping up and saying, stop it, they allow it. Then suddenly, in fact, in all state failures across the world, whether Germany under Hitler, the same pattern. People forget, when Hitler was elected at the time of anxiety, where there were a sense of German feeling subdued and everybody was angry. And then in parliament, they lazily gave him more power to legislate on the emergency. And so they gradually keep losing their power. By the time Hitler now recreated and have militarized the state and then taken over, it was too late. You see it all the time. So there is the elites are the lives of society. There also is the darkness that society has. Where elites are co-opted, those who ought to know, and where they collude with marauders and invaders, society is lost. Where the elites take the responsibility, strictly and say we need to protect the constitution, our country, our freedom, the country is safe. So,
Sam, in all this, where do you think we are heading as a people? We just keep looking back. We're a society that just keep looking back. Oh, we are talking the days of Ovie Whiskey, the days of Uputa, the days of Nikki Toby, the days of
Tafa Balewa,
I mean, we keep looking back.
Nostalgia.
Yeah,
Or
nostalgia.
the days of Biafra,
Yeah.
as they are not saying.
Yeah, so when are we going to? I mean, the standards keep going down, as it were.
I think, Father, it's really distressing because you see, the thing about states that are in our situation, in paralysis and in stagnation, is that the politics is not aligned to recovery. So what I mean by that is that look at today, we have election has just finished. Look at the decamping. Look at a leader of a party, PDP, accepting gleefully to be a minister of his opponents.
And right up to the end of his term, he said he was PDP.
Good. And he gleefully accepts. Look at the drift. Even in the National Assembly, you ask, today people are soft. Somebody made a comment, says, I think one professor, Dr. Laguji Lasisi, who's always writing, says, made a great point, says, they're suffering the land and no one is complaining because the professional protesters are in government directly or indirectly. So you have a position now where things are going bad. The government came in, the first address is yank off fuel subsidy and drop the ball over 500% increase. More hardship to people not protected. Nigeria has the lowest minimum wage in the world. Chad here has a minimum wage of about $101 and Nigeria is about $50. Benin has all over the world the lowest in the world. Nigeria has the least social protection. Even Cameroon provide for prenatal and postnatal care. Nigeria has zero. Nigeria has one of the largest multidimensional poverty. Nigeria has one of the, hunger. If you look at children out of school,
hunger index, yes.
Hunger index, we're very high. Out of school children, the highest in the world. So if you put all this together, is that an economy, but political economy for you to implement in one first swoop a move from 185 or 80 something to 600 something?
So you have just sunk the people further into misery.
And then you are thinking about electricity increase and that aspect of energy. Don't forget, in this context, Germany is proposed to spend about $4 billion for electricity cushion. EU spent about 300 something billion euro for protecting their people. These are rich where per capita income is
are
about
subsidizing their people consistently.
For energy.
US subsidizes farmers in America.
UK spent about $109 billion.
Yes. So what is the average Nigerian poor person gaining from government?
So what's the economist that tells you, well, cavalierly, it even removed the subsidy, agonizing, thinking about what to do gradually, just cavalierly.
No, you remove it and then you now start thinking about what to do.
And like I told you, I remember the committee, there's nothing they do. This is a game they're playing. There's no intervention that anybody is putting on ground to mitigate anything. Forget the story I tell you about. Look, we're talking about minimum wage increase, okay? 30%, not up to half of Nigerian states are paying the 30,000
naira,
which are used to calculate Nigeria as the least, not half. So who will pay? They are even owing salary on the old.
They are owing salaries for months and some years
on the old.
Yes.
So and then where is the money going to come from? So when they talk about, we're going to move minimum wage to 100,000 or that. Now, even if you do for federal workers are less than 1 million people or thereabouts. So where are you going to? Who will pay for the rest of the workers in local governments and those who are not working?
To end this, Sam, to end this discussion, how do we restore leadership integrity? Because I see, from everything we're saying, I see leadership integrity as a foundation, as a stepping stone for national development in all sectors.
Absolutely. So what we need to do first, Father, is to recover voice, the elite voice, the voice of truth and courage, to call it as it is. Then that voice should migrate to the judiciary. The judiciary, the court, is a very important institution because it has the sole mandate of the Constitution.
That's why they call it the last hope of the common man.
So we need to focus on the courts so they can speak the language, just like Oputa they spoke, just like Parker, or just like Lord Denning, say whether in war or peacetime, the language of law is the same. They should speak the language of rule of law. We must recover the state from lawlessness. That's a perverse lawlessness, recklessness. There's so much state capture and corruption. If you look at behavior of people in authority, recklessness. How can you take a governor of the central bank, suspend him? That's even a lot of contagion already.
It will affect everything.
So then you put him behind. Then the day you took him to court on gun running, first you denounce him as a terrorist, terrorist financing. Now,
I mean, see what that does for all the global terrorist money laundering movement. When you call this your central bank governor
as the chief
funder of terrorism,
just for political gain,
immediately your currency, the value of your currency will go down.
So that tells you that there's a little recklessness. They don't care. We just have to get power. We just have to keep that power, and then in doing that, they destroy the country. So what should happen is that these other non-political branch, the judiciary, should constitute themselves into a fighting force to push back on the political recklessness. I remember Abraham Chase at Harvard Law School used to teach us, says the governance theory of the court says when the political branch fails wantonly, then the non-political branch, the legislature, has a right to stand and govern. The Constitution gives the right to govern. So if the politicians are so reckless, they obey no law, they don't even obey the Constitution, they can bring their nomination after the constitutional deadline, they can put somebody behind bar without that the court says the reason, they say, oh, we don't care. It's now the time for the judges to, if the judges rise up, the civil society rise up, then we get this country back. We have to first, further, get this country back from lawlessness before we define the future. The country is trapped today in the highest quality of lawlessness, recklessness, power without morals, almost like a criminal state. We are clear-cut political, actors have decided to use the state for self. Today, you're talking about billions. Look at the people who are coming back. These are people who have convicted persons are visiting the villa every day.
People who have cases to answer.
And those who have been convicted. The British government is asking former governor of Delta State to refund
$130 million
pounds.
Or pounds.
Pounds, yes. And he has visited the villa, the British State of Power, at least more than 3 times. He is one of the friends. So we look at people who are coming, all the convicted, those who are people like whose cases we are convicted but mistried. The question is, if we can't clean the optics, if we can't reset governance, we are moving into a real criminal state where even judges can be shot on the broad street. Something like Colombia, where mafias of all kinds, drug mafias, have take over governance, and you can just be living church as a priest or a judge living in a chamber, or as a politician living in your office.
Well, let me say, God forbid. God forbid that we descend to Colombia or descend to Somalia. However, we need to work hard. And thank you very much, Sam. On this note, we'll bring this segment to an end. I've been discussing with Sam about the rule of law, about legitimacy, governance legitimacy, leadership legitimacy for national development. Because without legitimacy, you can't have any serious development. And we are talking about our country as if it's descending to a criminal enterprise.
Absolutely.
And we all need to watch out against it. Then judicial officers need to sit up.
They are the savior now.
Yes, they are supposed to be.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then members of the elite, religious elite,
speak out.
Economic elite,
speak out.
Should all speak out so that we get our country back.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. On this note, we'll bring this to an end. And may God save our country. May all of us who belong to the elite in every sphere of life, may we wake up now and see that we have a society to build.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.